Welcome. This is the first lesson of the course entitled Joint Venture Alliances and Partnership Promotions. We'll have 19 lessons, and we will talk about different aspects of alliances in international business, and in the second part of the course we will focus on joint venture and how to create and develop a joint venture, especially a joint venture between companies located in developed countries and companies located in developing or emerging countries. Most part of the materials of these lessons is from UNIDO. The first topic of today's lesson is overview of international business. And the outline is evolution of multinational strategies. We will discuss some terminological issues about multinational business. And we will understand the main drivers of globalization. The evolution of multinational strategies. The strategies and the organizational forms of international business have continuously evolved during last century. We have had a lot of different kind of models of organizations, but basically we can describe four most relevant models. Models that have different geographic origins and that have been prevailing in different period of time. The most relevant models are decentralized federation. First of all, the decentralized federation was quite widespread in the first decades of the last century, and was basically the kind of model adopted by European companies. The second model is the so-called coordinated federation. It is quite typical in the 50s, 60s, also 70s of the last century, and it is typical of American companies, American multinationals. The third model is completely different from the previous two ones, and we can call it the network. It's a kind of network model, a network led by a centralized hub. It emerged during 70s and 80s, and was basically typical of Japanese companies. Of course, we can notice that these different models have been adopted also in countries different from the country where they originated. I mean, even if, for example, the network led by a centralized hub was typical of Japanese companies in 70s and 80s, we can find this kind of model also in European international companies or in American international companies. The fourth model is the complex global networks. So also this network, this model is characterized by a network. The international company is a kind of network of different companies with some kind of relations, but there is a very relevant difference with the previous model, because here in the fourth model, in the complex global network, there is no a clear hub. It is not there is no a centralized hub. The leadership in the global network is very complex, and it is also possible that the headquarters share the leaderships with some of the subsidiaries. Of course, we are going to describe some models which are basically theoretical. In real business, any company has its own specificities, its own historical development, and so the kind of organization comes out from this specific development. So it is important to understand the basic models in order to have a benchmark, a theoretical perspectives, but please remind that in the reality the specific organizational model are usually very different. So let's start from what we called the decentralized federation. In the decentralized federation, national subsidiaries were given operational autonomy. I mean that the subsidiaries that operate, that were located in different countries, were pretty free to organize their activities in the country where they were located. Quite often these national subsidiaries had also strategic independence. I mean, they could arrange a kind of competitive strategy in order to reach a competitive advantage in that specific geographic area. So the prevalent roles of the parent company, the prevalent roles of the headquarters were, first of all, the appointment of senior managers and the appointment of the board. And this was very important because this was the way to maintain a kind of control over the national subsidiaries. The second role was the authorization of major investments. Of course, national subsidiaries in the decentralized federation has operational and strategic independence, but for most important investments, they still need to ask for help, financial help, to the parent company. And also the parent company usually collected the dividend from subsidiaries. So the financial relations between the parent company and each national subsidiary were very important and very strict. Second important characteristics of the decentralized federation is that there are no links among subsidiaries. So the relations were only between the parent company and the national subsidiary in national subsidiaries in different countries. There were no connections between the subsidiaries. In the coordinated federation, the key point is that the headquarters retained a dominant position in the strategies and operation of the whole group. So the headquarters draws the strategies and the way the group develops all over the world. The headquarters is the source of capital, financial capital, of technology, and it defines the strategic orientation. Subsidiaries' competitive advantage was based on continuing access to headquarters. So in this model, it is very relevant the quality, the effectiveness of the relations between subsidiaries and the headquarters, because the competencies, the resources that subsidiaries could use to compete in their national markets, in different national markets, these competencies came from the headquarters. The single subsidiary was not able to develop particular resources. So subsidiaries' competitive advantage was based on the quality of the links, of the connections with the headquarters, which is something very different from what characterized the previous model. We said in the decentralized federations, the most important link between a subsidiary and the headquarters was a kind of financial link. Here we have links regarding financial capital, of course, but also technology, competencies, and so on. The third model is the network led by a centralized hub. Here it is very important because the strategic goal is the strategic goal of this kind of model becomes pursuing a global strategy. So the company, the international company, doesn't compete in single countries, but develops the idea to compete globally, and so to consider different countries as parts of a whole global or at least international market. So the company is a network because the activities, the operations of each subsidiary in different geographic areas have to be connected. Because again, the company, the international company, plays its competitive strategy at global level, not considering different countries in a separate way. Headquarters organizes and leads the network again, so this is the meaning of centralized hub, and there are strong global integrations of operations fulfilled in different countries. So the value chain is segmented in different countries, and activities fulfilled in different countries are strictly connected, integrated in order to develop the global strategy. It is clear that this model can work because of the new technologies in ICT and also in transportation systems, which allow to develop these strict connections among activities fulfilled in different countries, and have these strict connections at a relatively low cost. We have a kind of a new era of globalization which started in Western countries and in Japan in late 70s and early 80s of last centuries. And what we can say that more or less 15 years later, this new era of globalization started involving the main areas of the whole world. So it was not a phenomenon of characteristics of Western countries, but it involved more and more countries all over the world. The new trends of globalization were based, first of all, on liberalization of investment flows. So the one very important point is the financial liberalization that had effect on the globalization of business. Also national market openness, technological progress, as we said before, and an increasing geopolitical stability. All these characteristics helped the development of business at international levels, helped the globalization of markets, helped the development of a network of companies located in different countries. And so we get to the fourth model, what we call the complex global network. So it is again a network. The idea of network, you understand, is absolutely central in the organization, in the business model and in the organization of business at international levels. But in this model, we have something new. It becomes very relevant, crucial, I would say, for international companies to be able to exploit multiple sources of competitive advantage. Reconciliate the advantages of global integration with those of national differentiation. And so to have a globally coordinated and integrated operations. So after the new era of globalization, it is important at the same time having a strict connection with the local areas, with the single countries where the company is operating, but at the same time having a global perspective, following a global strategy, and being able to develop connections at global level, in order to be able to exploit different sources of competitive advantage. Because while in the past, sources of competitive advantages were basically concentrated into the headquarters, into the parent company, so in the country where the parent company was located, now we can find, the company can find sources of competitive advantage all over the world, in many different countries. It depends on the characteristics of its industry, characteristics of the business, and so on. And so the company has to be able to look for sources of competitive advantages in different countries, organizing its activities at international level in order to exploit these opportunities. So in this model we have the development of a global production network. The network in the network the company develops its production. While in the past all the production phases were concentrated in one single country, and from that country maybe products could be sold in other countries. Now we have a production which is at the same time developed in different countries. In which kind of countries? In the countries where the company can find sources of competitive advantage. So links among subsidiaries become more and more relevant, and also strategic alliances becomes more and more relevant, because the network is not only among subsidiaries of the same companies. Also, some other companies can become can become a node of a network led by a certain kind of headquarter. The headquarter is a networking center. It is the center of the networking, of the network, of the international network, but it is not necessarily the absolute leader of the network. The leadership of the network depends on the competencies, and so it can be possible that a subsidiary in a certain country that has developed very specific competencies in a certain business or for a certain kind of activity, that subsidiary can become a leader for that business or for that activity, even if the subsidiary is controlled by, by the headquarters. Also, we observe an increased outsourcing of non-core activities. For the international companies, for the international network, becomes very relevant to focus all its strategic attention and also most part of financial resources on core activities and on core business, because competition becomes increasingly tough, and so it is important to focus resources on the most important kind of activities, what we call core activities, while outsourcing non-core activities. So it becomes very relevant also to find which are the best outsourcers and develop alliances with these outsourcers. And this is exactly one of the topics that we will face in next lessons. Now we can see some terminology of multinational business, because we have a lot of different words to say things regarding international or multinational businesses. Also, the economic literature has used a lot of different words. So I think it's important to clarify terminologies. We have international business literature has developed many terms to refer enterprises involved in international markets. First, we have international business or international company. Business across national boundaries and operations in more than one country. So, in a sense, all kind of companies that operate not only in their original country are international business or international companies. Multinational company or multinational corporation. Enterprises with operations and control of assets in several different countries, organized with many overseas subsidiaries. So here we have not only operations, but also the control of assets in different countries. So we have investments in different countries, and the kind of organization is based on the subsidiaries. So the enterprise controls subsidiaries, which are other companies which are located in foreign countries, to develop a certain kind of operations in that country. Transnational company or transnational corporation. Companies which are integrated and differentiated in terms of strategies and operations in order to take advantage of or suit markets and business conditions. So this kind of transnational company or transnational corporation takes into account both global integration and local responsiveness. Is what we said before. Nowadays it is important to be very close to the specific geographic market, to the local stakeholders, to understand the specificities of the geographic environment where the company is, but at the same time it is relevant to exploit the opportunities given by the global organization and the global integration of business and of sources of competitive advantages. So the transnational company or corporation manages to have this double focus, so to taking into account both the necessities connected to global integration, but also local responsiveness, being very differentiated. So the transnational company, the roles, the characteristics, the dimension also of each subsidiary can be different because roles, dimension, activities of different subsidiaries depends on the specificities of the country where they are located. And we have also multinational enterprise. This term is gaining wide acceptance in the United Nations and also, for example, UNIDO, to designate companies that use the various modes of operations presented so far. So we can say that multinational enterprise is a kind of general term to indicate different kind of companies that operate at international level in different modes with different kind of models. One thing which is very important to underline is that multinational enterprises are not only giant companies, are not only huge groups, but also we have a lot of companies, of small and medium-sized companies. Multinational enterprise takes a global approach to foreign markets and production locations. And it takes this global approach to foreign markets and production locations through, first of all, overseas subsidiaries, outsourcing, and the integration of a global value chain or global production network. So the multinational enterprise organize the value chain or the production activities at international level, developing a network with subsidiaries, controlled subsidiaries, but also with external companies that are outsourcers. Also, we have the term of global company, which is a company that designs products or services intended to be branded and sold on a global scale, and that integrates operations in different countries to benefit from different sources of competitive advantage. So the key point in the global company is that they consider single national markets as parts of a whole huge global market, and the global company tries to develop global brands, global products or services that can be basically standardized and they can be accepted by consumers in different countries, in different geographic areas. Multi-domestic company. It is a company that designs products and services for specific domestic markets and allows substantial independence to its foreign operations. This is exactly the opposite. You see, the multi-domestic company is considered most important to have a very strict relation with the single geographic market, and so to develop the offer, the products, the services, and the whole marketing mix in order to take into account the specific needs and characteristics of the local consumers, I mean the consumers in that geographic markets. And so different subsidiaries are very independent. There is no particular relevance in networking the different business in various countries. The last issue, globalization and its drivers. First of all, we have a lot of market factors which explain the globalization, the development of global consumption patterns. We notice that consumers in different countries tend to have the same kind of needs, at least the consumers that are in the same segments of the markets, and also the improvement of living standards. We also have to consider cost factors, the increasing of development costs, the increased need to achieve economies of scale, and increase of the intensity of cost competition. It's clear that the increased need to achieve economies of scale determines the increasing of the optimal dimension of the plants, and so they need to concentrate the production in a relatively small number of plants all around a region or a set of nations. Also, the increase of the intensity of cost competition requires to improve effectiveness and efficiencies, and again look for areas, geographic areas, where it is more convenient, less costly to produce. Also, we have competitive factors, competitive pressures in domestic markets, opportunities in foreign markets, and the global organization of value chain. National companies have to face increasing competition in their domestic markets, and of course they look for new geographic markets. Also because in foreign markets they can find new interesting opportunities to develop. And this is especially true nowadays for companies in Western countries, because in most part of markets in Western countries are mature, so they don't increase, the rate of increase is very small or is close to zero, and so in order to develop, Western companies have to develop in foreign markets, in markets which have a higher rate of increase of the demand. And also the opportunities to organize the value chain at global level, looking for places where it is more convenient to fulfill to fulfill different activities. Another relevant driver concerns the international business environment, the liberalization of trade and investment flows, advances in ICT and transportation technologies, and the development of newly emerging markets. As I said before, globalization doesn't regard only giant companies, huge groups, but is relevant also to for small and medium-sized enterprises. And in Western countries, we notice a lot of even small or very small enterprises which realize most part of their sales abroad. They are very competitive at international level, and indeed during these last years they are more and more competitive also in far markets, for example, in China, in India. This kind of small and medium-sized companies go global for proactive motivations or reactive motivations. Proactive motivations can be the research of new market opportunities, the will to exploit competitive advantage developed in the domestic market, but that can be very useful also in other geographic markets, cast for profits, international sourcing, and the phenomena of born global. So we have more and more small companies that start to become competitive at international level since the beginning of their life. And there are also some reactive motivation, basically competitive pressure in domestic market, the saturation of domestic market, excessive capacity or overproduction, and what is called the bandwagon effect, which means the others, my competitors go abroad, I need to go abroad because I want to do what they do, because I assume that if they go abroad there are opportunities, and so I look for the same kind of opportunities. It is clear this is a quite dangerous attitude, a quite dangerous strategy, but empirically it has been observed a lot of time. So, to sum up, we have a lot of development in international. We have had a lot of developments in international business during these last 60, 70 years. We have observed many different ways to become internationalized, and we have focused for most relevant theoretical models, which, as we said, have to be considered as a general benchmarks, reminding that in reality companies tend to organize their activities, their internationalization process, starting from their specific resources and their managerial capabilities. We have a lot of ways to call international business, also to take into considerations different ways to compete at international level. And one key concept is network, because nowadays most part of international companies organize their activities and their presence in different geographic markets through network. Network with an hub, which is usually the headquarters, and a certain number of nodes, subsidiaries, but sometimes also external companies which have relevant linkages with the group, with the network. Last key point, all these considerations don't regard only big companies, but also small, medium-sized companies, which are more and more protagonists of the internationalization process. Thank you for the attention.